Just like not everyone is meant to be a teacher or an astronaut or an Olympian, not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur either, yet so many people have this dream of becoming an entrepreneur. And it's like they spend their life either on the sidelines asking, well, what if? Or maybe chasing a dream only to realize it wasn't theirs to begin with. So how do you know whether entrepreneurship is right for you and whether to leap in with both your arms and legs wrapped around it or to say, not me, thank you. So Harriet Tubman famously said that every great dream begins with the dreamer. So it's super important to start by knowing who you are and what you really want. My name is Marisa Murgatroyd, and even though I've got a super successful online business now, I certainly wasn't born an entrepreneur. That was my brother. My brother was the one who would sell candy in high school and be making hundreds of thousands of dollars. And he had the newspaper route. He even, when we used to do these block garage sales in my old neighborhood, he would wake up super early and go and buy everybody else's best stuff, then bring it into a table and mark up all the prices. It felt like he was born to be an entrepreneur. And yet, I had nothing to do with any of that. I had no interest in money. All I cared about was books and ideas and solving problems. And I was the one who became the entrepreneur. So sometimes you can't predict who's meant to be an entrepreneur or who's meant to follow a more traditional career path, or can you? I was born an artist, and I didn't see the value of all my skills and experience until I was in my 30s. It really took me more than 30 years to realize that everything that I'd been doing my whole life was preparing me to become an entrepreneur. And even though my brother seemed like the one who was going to be the entrepreneur, it was actually me. So how do you really know? How do you know if this is what you're meant to do or not to do? Well, there are a few really good indicators, and I wanted to talk about them in this video because I believe we're meant to go for what we want in life. And a lot of it is just about giving yourself permission to not just have a dream, not just have a goal, but to go about realizing that dream and realizing that goal and making that your everyday reality. But of course, getting clear on what the goal and what the dream is 50% of getting there. The other 50% is once you know what you want, how to go about getting it. But this video is all about figuring out what you want and getting that clarity as to whether entrepreneurship is right for you or whether you may want to follow a more traditional career path. And neither path is better than the other. The question is, what path is right for you? So I've helped over 10,000 people figure out what path is right for them and choose entrepreneurship or something else. And the first thing that I think is super important for you to understand is what your motivations are for going into business or being in a career. And by motivations, I mean, what gets you up out of bed every single day? What has you excited to do the work? What is it that you really want? What's the lifestyle you want to live? What are the things you want to do on a day-to-day basis? Because so many people, like I said, have this dream of being an entrepreneur, but they're not necessarily willing to do what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur. And you can't have the outcomes of entrepreneurship, the freedom and the money and the impact without doing the work of being an entrepreneur. And what the research shows, specifically the work of a guy named Noam Wasserman from Harvard University, he studied thousands of both career professionals and entrepreneurs and found that their motivations differed and that there are actually 13 different motivations that drive us professionally and what we want to do every single day and how we want to show up and how we want to make money. And those are affiliation, altruism, autonomy, financial gain, intellectual challenge, lifestyle, managing people, positioning, power and influence, prestige, recognition, security, and variety. And pretty much across the board, people who fit better into a more traditional career path of having a job really preferred the security. It was important to them to have that predictability of knowing they've got that paycheck day in and day out, having that predictability of knowing what they were showing up to work to do every single day. Whereas the people who are more entrepreneurial really love the variety. They love the intellectual challenge. They love the autonomy of getting to be their own boss. So a big question for you is, when push comes to shove, do you choose the growth and the challenge and the variety and the autonomy? Or do you really prefer the stability and the comfort of knowing what to expect and knowing that you've got your needs taken for granted? And like I said, one answer is not better than the other. It's just your preference, what motivates you, what you're looking for out of a career or out of a business. Because a lot of businesses don't have that predictability, at least not in the first 3 to 5 years as you're growing them. Now, here's the thing, and this is really where the kicker comes in, is that a lot of people do like the intellectual challenge. They do like the variety and they do like the autonomy, but they also like security. They also like the predictability. And this is where the second factor comes in, because you could be entrepreneurial and have those entrepreneurial motivations, but you prefer to do your best work in the context of an organization. And this means that you're more of an intrapreneur than an entrepreneur. And I've had coaching students come to me, and the biggest realization they had is that they were really an intrapreneur. And then they gave themselves permission to be an intrapreneur. And an intrapreneur is someone who values the structure, who values the predictability, the security, the community of being in a larger organization. But at the end of the day, being able to clock out and say, not my responsibility. You don't have to take your work home in the same way when you're an intrapreneur because you don't own the company. You're not the one in charge of paying everybody's paychecks. The bottom line, the buck does not stop with you. So sometimes if you're the kind of person that has trouble creating your own structure, really being on your own, calling all of the shots, making the decisions, kind of waking up every day and doing what you say you're going to do. I mean, some of it could be not knowing the skills of how to structure your time and manage your time, but some of it could be that you really prefer and excel working inside of the context of an organization rather than doing it on your own and kind of being the lone ranger. And of course, as an entrepreneur, it doesn't mean you have to be the lone ranger, because you can ultimately build a thriving team in a context where you have people supporting you in so much of that. But usually in the early stages, you do have to be self-motivated. You do have to be willing to create that structure for yourself, to have that discipline of creating something from nothing, from building an organization, building a company, building product lines from the ground up with support. Of course, you could have guidance, you could have coaching, you could have people who are on your side rooting you on. But at the end of the day, there is a certain amount of work that you have to do and only you can do to get your company off the ground. And for some people, that's incredibly exciting and motivating because you love that intellectual challenge. You love that freedom to see what's going to come out of you. And for other people, it feels like too heavy a burden and too heavy a responsibility. And you may procrastinate or try everything that you can to get out of it. So a lot of times there is this push-pull between there's aspects of entrepreneurship that you really love and are drawn to, but there are aspects that you're really repelled by. And that's par for the course, because not everything about being an entrepreneur is romantic or glamorous, even though people say it is all the time, which is where our last factor comes in, which is, do you want it badly enough to actually do what it's going to take to succeed? Because so many people want the outcomes of entrepreneurship. Like I said, they want the success, they want the freedom, they want the impact. But the truth is, they're not willing to do the work. And a lot of times it happens when you're motivated kind of negatively. Like you want to become an entrepreneur because you don't want a job. You want to become an entrepreneur because you don't want to work for someone else. You want to become an entrepreneur because you don't want to work 9 to 5, or you don't want to drive every single day into work and spend your life on the highway doing a commute. And that's great. It's great to have that what you don't want factor. But if there isn't enough that you do want about being an entrepreneur, and not just the outcomes and the benefits, but if you're not able to fall in love with the process of being an entrepreneur, which is the resourcefulness, the need for resilience to get back up when you get a no, or you have a setback, or you have a challenge that you have to solve. If you don't love that process of sales and marketing, ultimately, of business development, of creating structure, of creating value for people, it's going to be hard for you to succeed as an entrepreneur, because the things that are challenging, you're just going to feel so much resistance towards them. Now, some of that can be solved by having a big driving why, what I call your 3 big whys. Your big altruistic why, Or what's in it for the world? What's that big transformation that you're offering that changes people's lives for the better? Your big selfish why of what's in it for you, and your big intrinsic why of how you get to feel every single day when you do the work. Some of that is solved by having clarity on your whys. But that third why, that big intrinsic why, of being able to feel like the work itself is its own reward. So even if the money takes time, even if the recognition takes time, even if the success takes time, you can find fulfillment in the work itself. That's super important to have you want it badly enough to keep doing it, to go through the challenging bits and out the other side for the big payoff, for the big reward. Because if you don't love the work, if you don't love the process, it's going to be hard to show up, even if you've got this huge altruistic why, you've got a reason for wanting to do this, you've got a selfish why, you've got a payoff. But if you're not loving that every day of being an entrepreneur, it's going to be hard to do this in and day out. And of course, no matter what, there are going to be parts that you love about it and parts that you hate about it. There is no perfect life and perfect career and perfect business. It's just par for the course to take the good with the bad, but there has to be enough good. There has to be enough that draws you in and compels you to want to do this, to show up every single day and say that this is who I am and this is the path that I chose. Because remember, every dream begins with the dreamer. So you want to make sure that what you're doing on a day-to-day basis checks out, because I think so many people are in love with the idea of being an entrepreneur, but not in love with the work. So if you're saying, I hate sales, I hate marketing, it's something that I feel like I have to do, I hate business development, there's a part of you that's going to have to learn how to fall in love with it, or learn new ways to doing it for you to say yes to fully being an entrepreneur. Now, I believe that's possible. I believe it's possible to fall in love with all of the parts, but you have to be willing to learn. You have to be willing to get outside of your comfort zone on almost a daily basis. And if you're a yes to that, if you're a yes to wanting it badly enough, to doing the work, to wanting to learn how to fall in love with all the aspects that feel challenging, then I've got a free masterclass you may want to check out that's going to teach you how to discover the business that you're truly meant to build and how to share it with the world. Because a good part of falling in love with your business and falling in love with the day-to-day is choosing the right business, choosing the thing that really makes your heart sing. And so many people who try entrepreneurship and ultimately fail or don't follow through, it's because they're choosing the wrong form of entrepreneurship, the wrong business model for them. You got this. It's time to live your message, whether you choose to be an entrepreneur or whether you choose to follow a more traditional career path. You got this. And if you're starting to think that entrepreneurship is right for you, keep watching. I've got a free masterclass that you can check out on how to discover the business that you're here to build, not just the business that you can build. Because so often when people try entrepreneurship and they either fail or they don't follow through, it's because they're choosing the wrong business for them or the wrong business model, a model that doesn't support their strengths, a model that really feels like you're not in your genius zone all the time. And when you choose the right model, it can really help you make this path easier. I've also got more trainings here on YouTube that can support you in making this choice to go all in and say, yes, I'm going to give entrepreneurship my best go, to wrap both your arms and both your legs around it. I've got a training on the best businesses to start with no experience and no money. And I've also got a training on whether to know and how to know if now is the right time to quit your job and live out your dreams. So check it out. I got links right here for you on the screen, and I'll see you in the next training.